Welcome to the My Jesus Story podcast. I'm Ezra.
And I'm Kim.
And today we have Tabitha.
Hi, glad to be here.
So to get us started, first question we'll ask is, where's the place God met you?
When I was a very young child at Batavia Baptist Temple, I was saved there as, I would say, kindergarten or first grade. I was very young. I don't remember the exact year. And then I was baptized when I was 9 after we had moved to Mount Orab out in Bible Baptist Church.
Okay, that's funny because that's actually where I was first saved as well.
Oh, in Batavia?
Batavia Baptist,
Nice.
like 8 or 9. So,
Okay.
yeah. So after you got saved, how did God move in your life? How did you start to grow in Him and things like that?
Well, actually, growing up, I was very involved in church, very close to God. I never missed a Sunday. I showed horses and showed livestock, which I know a lot of kids who are involved in that kind of thing wind up, oh, that comes before church. I very rarely went to any kind of Sunday shows. I was always in church on Sunday. I worked in Sunday school. I was a Sunday school helper, a Sunday school teacher. I worked in junior church, Awanas, Bible club, bus ministry, church choir, basically any place that I could, all the way through high school and college. I had a very close relationship with Jesus the entire time I was growing up. And then, like I said, until I graduated college.
So let's see. Did you always understand that you could have a relationship with God?
Yes, I did. That's why I said, like I said, growing up, I was involved in all the Bible studies, everything I could, pray all day, every day. Always felt very close to God, always felt like I was walking with Him. And I know most people, who grew up in church, when their testimony goes bad, it's, I was in high school, I fell in with the wrong group. I was in college, I fell in with the wrong group. Like I said, I made it all the way through high school and college with a close relationship with God. It wasn't until I was an adult that I faced some issues and wound up falling away from Him for a while.
So after falling away, how did God reach you? How did you come back to Him?
So it all started, I had graduated college. Of course, it starts with, I met a boy. And, when we first met, he did all the right things. He would go to church with me to see my kids not my kids, but, my Sunday school kids do their plays and everything. And we got married. Everything was good for a while. Well, then I actually wound up catching him having an affair. So I filed for divorce. And within just a matter of about 6 weeks of this happening, my grandfather, who I was very, very close with, and he had exhibited some signs of dementia, but he went from exhibiting some signs to full-blown dementia in the nursing home, no idea who we were.
Oh, wow.
And within a couple weeks of that, my grandmother, his wife, who I was also very close with, passed away. And so obviously at this time, I'm already, I'm upset, I'm bitter. All of these horrible things have all happened at once.
Yeah.
And then, so I went, like I said, I was in Bible Baptist Church, and I had gotten divorced, which in a lot of Baptist churches is a huge deal. But I will say in ours, I had plenty of people who were supportive. Who at the time, he was our assistant preacher. Now he's our preacher. But at the time, he was our assistant pastor, came by the house to pray with me, to check on me, and he was there for me. And so were plenty of other people in the church. But there were just this handful, very small group of girls that I had been in youth group with. You've been in youth group. You should be there for each other. You're supposed to support each other, all this. And like I said, this is a very small group, not the majority of the church, 2 or 3 people. But, and this next part's going to make me sound old, they would not talk to me. They even blocked me on MySpace.
Oh, my. Okay.
Before Facebook. And, that just helped, settle in the bitterness and everything. And I did stay in church for a little while longer, but I slowly started, I didn't want to be involved in the buses anymore, didn't want to teach junior church anymore. And I eventually wound up just leaving completely. I just let, I don't blame those girls at all. We were all young and stupid. It was my reaction to them that was the problem. That just let that bitterness and anger settle in. So I wound up leaving the church, and I moved up to Lebanon because that's where I was working at the time. So I was far away from my friends, my family, everything. I was just up there to work. And so I started dating this guy of course, we move in together, and we go out drinking on Sundays when we get off work because we worked midnights, and there was a bar up there that everybody went to because they were open 24 hours a day, that kind of thing. So we've been together for 4 years, I think, at this point. And I'm driving home from work one day, and I am pulling into the parking lot, and something just felt wrong. Like it's hard to describe. Something just felt off.
Yep.
But I knew in my head, I'm like, I need to get the car parked because something is happening. And so as I am backing into the parking space, my entire left side of my body goes completely numb, and I lost all control. I couldn't talk. I couldn't, nothing. So I managed to get the car into park, and I start reaching over with my right arm to open the door. And I'm like, what's my plan? I can't walk, but I'm just going to collapse in the parking lot. So I managed to think straight enough to call 911. And I'm on the phone with this dispatcher explaining to him that I think I'm having a stroke. What else could it be? And I'm struggling to speak, struggling to explain what's happening. And as I'm on the phone with this guy, everything just goes away. It clears up. So at this point, I felt so stupid. I'm telling the guy, I'm like, okay, you're not going to believe this, but everything's normal now. And I'm like, I'm going to go inside. I'll get my boyfriend. He'll drive me to the hospital, I promise. And he's like, the dispatcher just says okay and hangs up, which looking back, I'm like, shouldn't you have stayed on the phone with me or something? Yeah. So I go upstairs, I get my boyfriend, and we were not in a great place. So first he complains that I woke him up because he was still working midnights. I was working day shift. But so he walks the dog, I change clothes. And this is the first place that I can tell you 100% that absolutely God stepped in. I hadn't been in church in 4 or 5 years. I obviously hadn't been studying the Bible. I wasn't even listening to radio preachers. But still, even after all of this, God intervened and was 100% faithful in this. So where we lived, there were 4 or 5 emergency rooms within driving distance. Okay. And they're all relatively close. And my boyfriend keeps asking me, where do you want to go? Where we're going? I'm like, I don't know. You grew up here. I don't know anything. Just pick an emergency room. So we're in the car yelling at each other about this. And I'm like, just pick a hospital. So he drives to a hospital. It's not the closest one. It's not the quickest one. It had to be God that made him choose this hospital. Because we get there. Of course, they rush me back, EKG, everything. I haven't had a stroke. So, okay, what's happening? Well, we don't know. We have to hold you overnight. We contacted the on-call neurologist. He is going to do an MRI in the morning and figure out what's going on. Okay, fine. So the on-call neurologist comes in the next morning after he's done the MRI, or the next afternoon. They do the MRI in the morning. He comes in the afternoon. And he says, the results are not good. And that's when he tells me that I have multiple sclerosis. And I had had symptoms for years, but I had stopped going to the doctor because nobody knew it was wrong and they treated me like I was crazy. But the on-call neurologist at this random hospital that he chose was an MS specialist at one of the most in-demand offices in the state. Oh, wow. Yeah. So I'm like, that was absolutely 100% that God sent us to this hospital because he knew he hadn't even completed all the tests. All he had done was an MRI and knew what it was. Okay. And so, obviously it was terrifying and upsetting, everything at the same time. But I just remember laying in the hospital bed all night. Of course, I didn't sleep. They kept me one more night to do some more tests. And of course, I didn't sleep at all that night. But I just remember laying there all night and just praying, I'm so sorry for everything I've been doing. I'm so sorry, that I've fallen away from you. And, just help me, guide me, whatever is supposed to happen next. Please help me through this. And my dad and I are very close. And I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen him cry. And he was very, very close that day, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, I'm just like praying for him and for my mom. And so, yeah, that was God brought me back. I knew he was the one that brought me to that hospital, to that doctor. So I get out of the hospital. And then, of course, you have 100 follow-ups over the next couple weeks. Well, I go in to one of my follow-up appointments. And I'm wearing one of my favorite t-shirts, Jesus and Coffee. And my neurologist walks in and sees it. And we get to talking. It turns out that he is a Christian.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so we start talking and he's like, oh, good. He's like, and starts explaining that he always believes that prayer is one of the greatest parts of any treatment program, and so I've got somebody else there who's Christian with me, finally. Yep. And then, you see the neurologist, you see their PA, you see everybody. So then the next week, my next appointment is with his physician's assistant. And honestly, I don't remember how the topic came up with him, but it turns out that he's also a Christian. He was actually a convert. He was a practicing pagan.
Okay.
And he's like, I don't go into detail, but he's like, all I'll say is that I was at one of our ceremonies one night and something occurred that confirmed to me that we are on the wrong side and we are messing with darkness. And so the next Sunday he was in church, saved and baptized.
Wow.
Yes. So now I have, these two really strong Christian men on my side. And I'm talking to the PA and I was like, I've seen people in my MS groups talk about, their MRIs and they see how much damage they have. And I said, I don't want to see it and know because you don't want to get inside your own head, but out of curiosity, how bad is it? And he said, it's a miracle you're as normal as you are. He said, honestly, from looking at your MRI, I expected you to be so much worse when I walked in here. He's like, I didn't expect you to be sitting up, walking normally. All of your exams, everything is almost completely like a normal person. And it's not what I would expect after looking at your MRI. So I'm just, once again, I'm like, well, that's obviously 100% God. And again, it's just amazing to me because I knew that I had been living wrong. I had been doing all of these things wrong, but he's still protecting me. He's still getting me to the right place,
Amen.
And so over the next year, I was still with my ex, but I started, I came back to church on, Christmas, Easter, Mom's birthday, Mother's Day, Father's Day, that kind of thing. And I was praying every day. And one day I left the apartment to go to our the Brown County auction. Our company was bidding on some cattle. And as I'm driving down there, my boyfriend and I had a fight. And as I'm driving down there, I'm, praying about this whole situation. I'm like, I know I'm getting closer, coming back to God, but I know I'm still living wrong. I know I'm still doing things wrong. And it's just this voice comes to me and is like, well, break up with him and move back home. Move back to where you have a good Christian support system. And it was just calm and just calm and peace we'd been together for 5 years, half of my 20s, but just this calm and peace settled over me like, okay, that's what I'll do. So I went to the auction. I came back home. He wasn't there. I went ahead and packed up the dog and packed my bags and we came home. There were no tears, no nothing. I was just like, I think we should be friends. I think we need to break up. Okay. Just a very calm. I was like, this is how I know I'm doing the right thing. I'm not freaking out. I'm not yelling, not screaming. Just, this is what God told me to do. We're done.
God gave you peace.
Exactly.
About that,
So I moved back home with my parents, stayed with them for a little while to save up some money. And I started looking for a house. And from the time that I was little, because, they always talk about from the time you're a kid, there are always people or Sunday school teachers and stuff are telling you pray about what you want, even in your future, if it's something. So from the time that I was little, I always asked God for an old farmhouse with a barn, and a field and everything. So I start looking for a house and my mother keeps trying to talk me down. She's like, you're on a single income. Because I had my demands. I'm like, it has to be a farmhouse at least 50 years old. It has to have at least 2.5 acres. Okay. She's like, you have one income. You do know this, right? And I just come home. It doesn't matter. This is what I prayed for since I was a kid.
Yeah.
It is out there. I'm going to find it. Yep. And we were actually driving to church one Sunday. And I pulled up the realtor.com app and this new alert popped up that had not been listed yet. And so I asked my dad to drive by it. And we pull into the driveway. And he's like, you're not going to believe this. I know the people who owned this house two owners ago. He's like, so I know it's been taken care of. I know they've remodeled a bunch of it. And it was within my price range. And it was everything I wanted, plus more. There was a 4-car garage. The yard was already fenced. And,
wow.
And within my price range. And we're going, there has to be something wrong. It was extremely dirty. They were like quarter level dirty. That was it.
Okay.
Like, I can clean. Yeah. So I wound up, we saw it on Monday. I made an offer Tuesday morning, and by Friday we were signing the contract on it.
Wow.
And I was like, so like, God actually, like, that was everything I wanted plus more. And it's just been ever since, I came back, and ever since I came back down here, and I've been surrounded by Christian family and friends. God's just done so many amazing things. I didn't date for a very long time after leaving my ex. I was just like, I need to make sure my life is on track. I'm back where I'm supposed to be. So we had some classes at our church at the time that were women only, and we had actually a single ladies class specifically for divorcees and widows. So I spent a long time in all those kind of classes and studying the Bible myself, and just said, I'm going to be on my own until I know I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I started praying about it about 3 years ago, and I was like, yeah, I'm not quite ready. Then about 6 months later, it was on my heart to just join Facebook dating. None of the other ones, just that one. Because I think so many of the other ones are so involved in like hookup culture, and that's not what I wanted. And so I had a couple of interesting experiences. And then my friend Kim was teaching our ladies class one day, and the lesson she did was about Abraham sending his servant to find a wife for his oldest son. And, when the servant gets there, and before he meets Rebecca, he prays very specifically, when she comes out here, let her say that she's going to water my camels. The woman who says she will water my camels is the one that is, So after that, we had a whole thing about praying specifically. So I call my friend Bree. She's a very strong Christian lady, and she is a prayer warrior. If you want somebody who will call down fire for you, she is the one to call. So I called her and said, we're going to give, we talked about being specific when we pray. So, here's what we're praying for. And just gave her the list, and no question, no argument. She's like, all right, done. That's what we're praying for.
That's amazing.
And within about 3 weeks of both of us praying for this every day, I met Tom, who he grew up Catholic, but he had left the Catholic Church. And I won't say a whole lot because he's going to be on one of your podcasts. I won't say a whole lot, but he was searching for something. And we met, and literally half of our first date was discussing the Bible and talking about King David. We stayed at Frisch's until they kicked us out. Like, we are closing now. You have to leave. And he was everything on our checklist that we had been praying for. Wow. And we actually got married 3 months ago today.
Okay. Congratulations.
So, thank you.
Yes.
So yeah, God's just been amazing these past several years.
Do you care if we go back to praying specific prayers?
No, not at all.
Like, explain what that means to you.
So the way that Bree and I talked about it, and the way that my friend Kim talked about it, was that so many people think you just have to be a generic, oh God, please help me with this situation, or please help me with that situation. But there is nothing wrong with being very specific. Like with Tom, my main points on my list, first of all, he has to love God. He has to love animals, because I am the craziest of crazy dog ladies. And some men have a problem with that. And, he has to love me in, a strong biblical sense, and has to understand how to be the head of the household, or at least be willing to learn these things. And so for us, it was just, we had a bullet point specific list. These are the things that are important. And I feel like these are things that God would find acceptable. Now, do I think you should pray to God, strike this person with lightning? No. But when you're praying and asking for something, or asking for a sign, I don't think there's anything wrong with being specific.
Yeah. Well, it's a throwback to an episode earlier that referred to specific prayers. And it's interesting that we've been doing this for a year and a half. And you two back to back have mentioned specific prayers.
Nobody else about it.
I don't think ever has. So, and I think that's an interest. I just think it's interesting, number one, but then also, new Christians, and maybe old Christians, I don't realize that you can ask for specific things and pray for specific things.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with, if I want this, I need this one specific thing. If it's of God, there's nothing wrong with it. Now, like I said, you shouldn't be asking, for a curse upon somebody, but there's nothing wrong if it's in God's will to ask for something specific. I can't go into detail, but I had a situation a couple months ago that, I was like, God, please give me a sign within the next few days, but if I'm making the right decision here, because I haven't slept, it's really bothering me. And then a thing happened the next day. And as soon as it happened, this overwhelming calm and peace of, okay, that's that was the sign I've made the right decision. I'm now comfortable moving forward with this.
Can you look back on, so you spent majority of your life with God, you spent a section of it without, and then you spend, so far with God.
Yes.
That time frame without. Can you explain or point to any lack of peace or just unsettledness did you have any of that?
Yes, a lot of times. I mean, especially within my relationship, because it was clearly not of God. We weren't in church. We're living together outside of marriage. Like I said, we're going out drinking together at the bar in the mornings when we get off work. And yeah, there was a lot of unrest, a lot of disagreement, and just in general, when I was making decisions, there was no praying, God, tell me what to do or give me the right direction. And there was never, I don't want to say I was completely miserable all the time. I wasn't, there are people who've had it far worse than me. I don't want to, try to play the victim, but it was definitely not as much joy in my life as there was before in sense.
Like joy, joy even in crummy times.
Yes.
It's a different kind of joy.
Right. There's a different thing. Like now, even when I'm having a terrible day with MS or, yesterday was my infusion day, you get to spend the whole day sitting in the hospital tied to an IV pole. It's just a part of life. And I can be content even when it's horrible. Like Paul talks about in the Bible, being content no matter how bad the situation. You don't have to be depressed and doom and gloom, even if you're in a horrible situation. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a lot easier to be that way with God.
Because he's kind of guiding the boat.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to move over to the topic of transformation. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to ask, what is the way in which God transformed you? How did that look in your walk with God?
It was a slow transformation coming back. But I started, once I moved back down here, the first thing I started going to church more often. And then honestly, that part only took me a few weeks to want to be back there every Sunday and, be there every time the doors are open. And just over time, I started reading my Bible more and, praying more than once a day and praying more than just, oh God, can you please help me with this? Can you please give me this? But actually being more thankful and being more grateful. And what came along with the MS diagnosis was I immediately had to stop drinking. So, I mean, that was that pulled me away from, obviously I was with my ex for 5 years. So obviously we had some mutual friends, but not being able to do the same things anymore very quickly pulled me away from them pretty much completely. And so I started, walking closer with God, reading my Bible more, studying more, started, got rid of a bunch of my older clothes. I wasn't dressing like a stripper, but definitely more revealing than what I would wear now. So slowly started changing the way I looked, the way I dressed, the way I talk, the things that I would watch and read. I love scary movies, and I grew up on the old classic ones where there wasn't, blood and gore and sex and profanity. Mm-hmm. But obviously when I was out of church, it was, Friday the 13th and, a Hostel, all the gorier, the better type of deal. Yep. And so I started moving away from that and watching more of, more of the classic stuff again. Okay. And, cleaner entertainment, and went through my playlist and deleted a bunch of music that I had on there and changing the way that I spoke. I didn't cuss like a sailor, obviously, but I still didn't necessarily always use the best language. Yeah. And just very slowly over time started, getting back to who I was when I was younger, all the things that I was doing before when I was close with God. And now I'm back. We sing in the church choir together and back there, every time the doors are open again, and getting ready for our Easter breakfast right now, and just being involved and volunteering with everything I can now, back to wanting to participate with church activities and make more Christian friends.
Did you feel convicted to do that stuff, or did you just know, no, I'm not supposed to be doing this stuff? So did you give it up joyfully, or kind of did you relent? Like, well, I guess I can't listen to this song anymore.
So honestly, some things were joyfully, it was just an immediate, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be saying that. But then other things, I'm a huge music person, so that took a little while. That was harder to give up. Somebody once referred to my playlist as being schizophrenic because it's just all over the place, and same thing with movies. Once, you've seen this movie 500 times, you know what's going to happen. It's kind of a comfort thing to watch over and over. Or TV series. I was a huge Sex and the City fan at the time, which is clearly not something you should be watching as a Christian.
Yes.
So some of the things were harder to give up, but it was definitely a personal conviction of, okay, you shouldn't be watching this. If God was sitting right here, would you still be enjoying this, or how would you feel?
Right.
So some things were easier to change than others.
Right. It's kind of interesting to me how you give something up because it's not right.
Right.
But then you get music that's so much better. Like I'm a music person.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, some of these songs I'm listening to probably not good.
Right.
But then in the process, I've discovered some awesome musicians that bring me so much joy.
Yes.
And same thing with entertainment.
Right.
And now I have a hard time like watching, I don't know, like a rated R movie that I might ordinarily, and I don't like.
But like the language and stuff.
Yes. I'm like, too much, know?
VidAngel. I'm a huge fan of VidAngel streaming service now. You can set your filters to what you do and don't want to see. You can set the filters for nudity, for profanity. They even have the Christian filter where you can take out any use of the Lord's name in vain.
Wow.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
Okay.
It's my favorite streaming service now.
So that's just like Netflix or something like that. So it's a filtering app.
Yes, and you just set, your filters for profanity. You can choose what words you don't want to hear. My personal favorite is what they call the Christian filter, because you can actually remove any blasphemy. Anytime the Lord's name is taken in vain, it will take it out and skip over it.
So can you think of a time when God gave you a gentle correction or conviction?
I think the biggest thing would be diagnosing me with a brain disease when I was living completely wrong. And that seems like a pretty big correction to me. But he has been full of grace in that, like I said, my MRI is supposedly horrible. I've never looked at it. And that I'm, 1,000 times better than what I should be according to the damage. But I would say sending me to the hospital and being like, hey, by the way, this is what you're going to deal with forever. That's pretty big.
Can we go back to a second to when you got divorced and you went back to church?
Yeah.
What did your church family do? How did they get it right for you? How did they treat you the way you would have expected to have been treated?
Honestly, when I came back, as I said, there were just a couple of girls that were kind of an issue before. They no longer went there. They were going to different churches now. And everybody else acted as if I had never been gone. To them, it was just as if I had been there every Sunday, like nothing had ever changed. Nobody made me feel bad for being gone. Nobody came up and questioned me and said, well, what were you doing? Or I saw this picture on Facebook. None of that. They just welcomed me back like nothing had ever happened or nothing had ever changed.
Nice. Grace.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice. And not that you needed condemnation and not that you needed any of the judgment that sometimes comes with when you do something wrong.
Yes, there was none of that. Like I said, everybody acted like I had been there the whole time.
Yeah.
Like I had never even left.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And like I said, our assistant preacher, he was our assistant preacher at the time that I got divorced, was actually our actual preacher at that time. And, even he, knowing that I had been gone, obviously as the leader of the flock, knew I'd been missing for 5 years. He never even mentioned it, he just came up and welcomed me back and so glad you're here, as if, like I said, as if the past 5 years had never even happened.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think that's the best way to handle it. When you have somebody who's been out, when they come back, I think one of the worst things that you can do from that perspective is make a big deal. Because I've heard people talk about, they were gone from church for a year or two. And then when they came back, everybody made this huge deal about them being back. And I think you need to be welcoming, be like, hey, we're glad you're here, but you don't need to harp on the fact that they have been gone. They're aware they've been gone. They're aware they messed up. You don't need to drive it in.
So you just touched on the question that I wanted to ask you just a little bit, but if you could go further into detail about what is your, someone who has strayed away from God, what is your advice? How can they come back to God without feeling like they've gone too far or feeling like they can't come back?
Well, I think just start praying about it. If you don't want to jump back in, because it is scary to make that big change and come back, because you feel like people are going to judge you. Even if you know they're not, there's still that fear that somebody's going to. So I think start praying and reading your Bible yourself to start coming back and realize, just start reading stories in the Bible. At no point does God reject somebody who tries to come back to him. He welcomes anybody back. And there's no point in the Bible where somebody prays or comes back to Jesus or comes to God and he says, no, you're too far gone. You need to go away now. Mm-hmm. You're always welcome back. Just the story of the prodigal son. And at no point did the father say, no, you were in the pigsty. You're beneath our family now. He welcomed him back, slaughtered the fattened calf, was happy for him to be there. I think we all just need to remember that it doesn't matter what you've done. Jesus died for everybody, no matter how horrible the sin. Look at the thief on the cross. He had literally lived his entire life away from God. And then at the last moment, it gets told, you'll be with me in my Father's house.
Mm-hmm. So coming to our last and final question, you're sitting on a bench with Jesus. You look at him and say,
I would ask why he took my mom's friend Valma as young as he did in a car accident, because she was a very strong Christian lady, very strong faith. And it was just devastating to her family. And I still don't understand why. So that would probably be like, I've lost other people I love, but they were older people and, they lived a full life. So, and she was just such a strong Christian lady. It was such a shock. So I would probably ask why her so young.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tabitha, for coming on today. We appreciate it. And thank you for listening to today's episode. Join us next episode for another encouraging testimony on My Jesus Story podcast.